All right, guys. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Lions Guy Podcast. And today we've got two prior podcast guests, two of my favorite people in the world. I got Mr. Craig Stanland, reinvention architect, author of Blank Canvas, which I just wrapped up, man. I was like, it's one of these things, man, like you and Mike Maltesta, like yours are stories. You know, I read a lot of like leadership, personal development stuff, but I love getting into the stories. So maybe we'll bounce around that a little bit too. Now that I'm even more in tune to your story. And then we got RJ Singh, host of the Ultra Habits podcast. And like I said, both these guys have been on. Craig was on episode 22, and then RJ came on Lions Guy podcast episode number 28. Guys, thanks for being here. How you guys doing?
Dale, thank you so much for having us. RJ, good to see you. I'm excited for this conversation.
Yeah, for sure. And funnily enough, I think I had you guys on my podcast in pretty close succession too. So whilst we haven't met, I haven't met you guys. Certainly, I'm here in Australia. I feel like I know so much about you. So I really am going to enjoy this forum.
Yeah. So real quick, Craig, we'll start with you. Give everyone a 30-second drill. Who you are? What do you do?
I am Craig Stanland. I live in Connecticut, and I'm a reinvention architect and mindset coach. And what I really do is focus on helping my clients connect with meaning and fulfillment in the second half of their lives. And I'm also in the process of writing my second book, which is going to play into this conversation that we're going to have about habits.
Sweet. RJ?
There you go. RJ Singh, founder of Ultra Habits. We are primarily a executive learning platform. The podcast is how we drive our message. So we are focused on helping executives within the business professional community kind of evolve from a mind, body, spirit complex. Really, what they didn't teach you in business school to perform at your peak, we are trying to fill the gap. In terms of what I'm doing, I'm in the process of trying to develop a online course with experts like yourself, Craig, Dale, facilitating a module, all habits orientated. So continue to watch this space.
Sweet. Yeah, no, you hit it right. Like the stuff we're going to talk about today. I don't know about you. I got inspired by a lot of my high performance mindset through podcasts. I mean, it's one of the things that kind of inspired me to kind of be what I call a soldier in a good fight, which is like over the past 10 years, the different content I was digesting was mindset transformational, because you're not getting taught this in school. You've got to learn it. And when you're, what I like to say, leading the way and solving your own problems, we all find ourselves right back on the same path of high performance habits and so on. So RJ, we'll stick with you real quick. Like what's being a high performer? When we say that, what does that mean to you?
Just on that, I think you nailed it, right? Like for me, I was at a point where I was professionally, I had ticked the boxes. I had gotten kind of equity in a company that was growing. I thought that was the be all and end all, and started to get quite flat, right? Like, okay, well, where do I go from here? And it was through access to podcasts, primarily the Rich Roll podcast, where I really identified with his story. Alcoholic, he was a runner. And even though I never met him, he kind of provided a roadmap for me as to where I wanted to go. So that's the power of mentorship that you can get from not even meeting someone and just kind of watching what they do and how they move and groove. So I just wanted to say that. Now, in terms of your question, high performance to me is a kind of holistic approach to, this mind, body, spirit, evolution, where we look to enhance all areas of our lives. So for me, high performance isn't being overly involved in one segment, let's say work or your business, at the suffrage of, let's say, your family life. So it's about, how do I evolve and how am I intentional in all aspects of my life? And then what are the habits, behaviors, and attitudes I bring into that enable me to kind of be the best I can be in that particular space, right? So it's a real overall approach. And I think what I've seen over, the last few years is a hustle hard, grind hard mentality, and a real superficial view on what some would call high performance, but to me, it's just workaholism or kind of obsession or another form of addiction.
Yeah.
I'll pass it to you, Craig.
Thank you, RJ. And I'm going to be very similar to yours. I see it very much as a holistic approach. Where I look at a high performer is connecting with one's calling, something that provides meaning in their life, and almost putting that as the North Star, and then creating balance around that. Because if you're only going gung ho on your calling, but your family life is suffering, and family is a core value, that's going to be really, you're going to be living in without congruence. I know Dale loves that word, and he introduced. I love that word, but we want to have that balance. So it's connecting with that calling and looking at the different pillars in our lives, whether that be spiritual, emotional, mental, physical, and doing all of the things that we can within those parameters, in a sense, to fuel that calling, to keep everything going. Because for me as a writer, the more interesting things that I do, the better my writing becomes. The more I push myself in the gym, I actually become a better writer because of that, because of challenge, going out and traveling, experiencing, seeing different things, seeing something that makes me feel small, standing in front of the ocean, let's say, going at the foot of a mountain. All of those things fuel not only the balance of my life, but my calling. And that to me is a high performer.
I'll throw in there, like I use that analogy of if your life were a business, you're the CEO. So you can't let any one department fail, or else the whole company is going to suffer, right? So you can't be hyper focused on sales and forget about service, because new businesses are going to come in the front door and fall out the back door, right? You're not going to win. Or you can't be all about sales and service and forget about HR, because now culture is going to. Now you think about those things. Now that's the equivalent of your career, your wealth and your family and and your health and your wellness, right? All those are just departments, man. And guess what? You're responsible for all of them, and you've got to make sure they're all in tune, or else you're going to feel the consequences in some way. And I think a word, maybe I didn't hear you guys say it, but I think is important is like to still maintain your joy in life, right? To go get your goals accomplished, and be bold to go accomplish big goals, but still love yourself, and people still love you, and still have these things around you. And because what is it for if you're not, freaking feeling a joy, so to speak?
That's one of the most critical elements. And I'm glad that you brought that up, is to have that joy, because without it, why are we doing all this? And I think that joy, when we really experience that, it ripples out into all the other areas of our life. It improves our friendships and our family and our work relationships, works our one-on-one with clients or whatever we may be doing. But it really is to give ourselves that permission to really love ourselves, and love ourselves through the process of what we're doing.
And you hit on that in your book, right? You're part of your story where before shit hit the fan for you, like you were there, that it seemed like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like you were hitting that juncture with your wife at the time, that we were like, man, all this other stuff is superficial. Like we need to go travel and experience, because I think it sounded like you were hitting this point where it's like, it's not all about the money. Like money may be the means to have the means to go experience some of this, but it is not, the joy in itself is not there per se, right? Because you can work the 80, 120 hours a week and you have all the money in the world, but if you're not enjoying it, whatever. But am I right, Craig? You were kind of finding that moment.
It came to a real inflection point, and it actually was when I sat down and did the math on how much we were spending on going out dining, and it was close to $4,000 a month. And it was just, that was wine and, food and all the, eating at the finest restaurants, and just realizing that money could go towards other experiences, longer experiences, trips. We could cultivate some real meaning, and, as opposed to just chasing that quick dopamine shot of fancy meal after fancy meal, just chasing wine bottles in a sense, but to really create something different. And that was a turning point for me. It was a little bit too late that I started realizing it, and the shit still hit the fan. But that was the beginning of my understanding of what's important in life.
RJ, I know for you were always a high performer, even athletically, and it seemed like you even used like your high performance skills like on the dark side, because your high performance skills can go towards something, right? Being a high performer, we want to be on that solid path. But RJ, what about you? Like, where do you think, like, where you are today as far as a high performer, like that trigger kind of set in? And
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So I was always hyper focused. I remember back in the day when I was doing what I was doing, uh, you know, selling drugs. Like I would be up at 5:30 a.m. and I would be hyper focused on the moves I'd be making throughout that day. And I was very intent on executing whatever my plan was, as chaotic as the environment was, and as drunk as I probably was throughout the whole day. But the reality was, reflecting back, I was very driven, very focused, but I didn't have, uh, I wasn't dialed in. I wasn't tuned into the right way of living, right? So for me, having a framework and having kind of a system for life is really important, because if I don't have one, I'm all over the shop and I tend to gravitate towards the dark, right?
yeah,
There's a beast inside me and it's there today. I can feel it, I can see it. And for me, I need to learn how to channel it, how to temper it, how to use spirituality, how to use physicality, how to use mindset training, all this wonderful stuff and all the information that we have access to today to continue to temper and refine myself. I want to unpack what Craig talked about as well. I think it's really important, right? Like we talk about meaning, I was having a conversation with someone about this the other day, and I'm sure you guys are aware of that study that was done with young parents of young children, right? Where they did some research and they found that young parents didn't find the rearing of young children enjoyable or pleasurable or even fun most of the time, but they derived a deep sense of meaning.
mm,
And, what we may think is enjoyable at the time, cracking those wine bottles or those ridiculous trips or whatever we are doing to try to make ourselves feel better than where we're at, isn't necessarily what gives us meaning. And I'm even on that journey myself in terms of, like I also am in the business world currently, and a lot of that stuff is easy, but it doesn't give me meaning. And it's kind of reaching a crescendo too, right? Because we go through different iterations in our own life where we have this desire to be more congruent and to, at what point, okay, there's the money. It's like, okay, well, the money's there, but I'm also, time is probably the most important resource. And how do I want to be spending that time? And I'm with Craig, like I want to be spending my time on what derives and what really gives me a deep sense of meaning and purpose.
I
yeah,
think
100%.
RJ, something you
Go
said
ahead.
in there. There's a couple things that hit me was talking about that dark side. I have that too, and I think that is very much what Carl Jung was talking about with our shadow and our shadow self, and really acknowledging that it exists, trying not to repress it, and saying, "Yes, I see you," and creating some positive habits that allow that to come out. Because if we start trying to shut that down, that's when all hell breaks loose. If we
That's
try
it.
to push that shadow into a closet, that's bad news. I was very similar, I think, to you. I was hungover half the time, but when I was committing the fraud that ended up landing me in prison, I was an efficiency machine. I was a habits machine. The FBI actually said to me, who else was involved in this? I said, nobody. And they said, bullshit. There must have been 30 people running this fraud. And I said, no, it's just me. And they're like, no way one person could have done all this. And it was just,
You're like, no, man, I'm a high performer.
That's it. Performance is agnostic, man. Right? Like you could serve
Yeah,
powers of
yeah,
ill.
yeah.
Like it.
And that's why I think it's so important that you brought that up, and Dale, that you initiated that. I think it's just so important that it can be, where do we direct those energies? What is the intention that we want to put behind our actions? Because we could take the same identical action, but if our intention is a negative one, the energy behind that's so different. But if we have a positive intention behind that, it gives us that meaning, it gives us that joy. And I think that's a huge differentiator.
And when you started applying your high performance mindset to, I'll say, the good North Star, how did life change for you, right? You know, you were you both had paths of high performance towards the dark side. You're letting a monster run loose, but now we're talking about, you know, you're using, you know, the good wolf, let's say, and how has that changed things for you, kind of being on this path?
Well, I think for me, I think our Craig and I are different in the sense that, and I'll let Craig speak for himself, but I think Craig had initially good intentions in his career and then found himself on a certain path. It's like a slippery slope, right? Like for me, you know, like I remember sitting there with a friend that was selling drugs and we were having beers at his house. And I must have been like 23 or 24. And I just said to him, I said, I love this shit. I absolutely love this. Like there is nowhere else I'd rather be than in this chaos. Now I paraphrase, right? Like, and he was just like, God. He looked at me because he was doing the same thing, but he realized like I was on another level, right? Like I think I had, and even at the age of 17, I remember having conversations with friends that I was selling weed with. Like they were like, dude, you're on a different level with this in terms of, and for me, what it was this was something they were doing. For me, was a sense of identity. I was deriving power from this because I was feeling powerless and hopeless. This gave me a deep sense of meaning. And even though it was bad, it gave me meaning. And so I was extremely driven in this space. Now, when I started to shift that behavior, it was a long journey coming to Australia, long journey, right? What started to happen was I started to do well in the business world, and people started to say, "Hi, wow, you're you know, you're great, you're unique." Like I paraphrase, like I started to get accolades from my environment, and then I think what I started to do was I realized that I could build this new sense of identity, and it was actually appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was like, wow, this is great. Like I started to derive that same level of meaning I had years ago in the streets, but I'm not getting arrested for it.
Yeah.
This is fantastic, right? Like, and I could use my mouth and talk shit and get paid for it without breaking the law. Like this wasn't too different from a skill set perspective, if you know what I'm saying. But
Yeah.
like, I'm getting like accolades. Like people are like, wow, you're really good at this shit. Like you're different. I'm like, wow, okay. And this is what I didn't realize was happening now in hindsight was I started to gravitate towards, okay, this is where I'm going to build this new sense of identity, and that was off.
Right. Craig, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say for me, things really, so prior to being arrested by the FBI, I always said, if you asked me what I wanted, I would have said freedom. And I thought that by achieving a tremendous amount of money and success that I could buy freedom. And I just didn't realize how futile that was. And that's all I was chasing, was this supposed freedom. After all, hell broke loose and I lost everything. And I started channeling that energy into something that gave me more meaning. You know, the coaching, the writing, speaking, all of those things. I got the freedom that I wanted, because really what I was looking for, freedom and peace, are two sides of the same coin for me. And I achieved that level of peace because I'm doing what it is that I'm meant to do. And all of my habits support that. And I was realized it doesn't have to do a damn thing with any money. It doesn't have to do anything with a job title. It's nothing to do with me calling myself a writer. It's none of that. It's just sitting my butt in the chair and writing every single day, working with clients and just learning and challenging myself to understand myself better so I can help them better. There's just a level of peace. I'm no longer, we were talking about something before, it made me think about this term that I coined called the Golden Treadmill. And that really is, we jump on the Golden Treadmill when we're doing work that is not fulfilling, but it gives us the status, the prestige, the power, the materialism. And we just keep sprinting, thinking that we're going to fill that hole inside of us, but we never will. You know, you're going to stay on that treadmill forever. And there's, a couple of different options I see for that treadmill, but I actually was able to, life knocked me off, and now I'm no longer on it. And I have that peace, and to, be a little cliche, I'm on the path that I want to be on. And that's how things changed.
And how much, Craig, for you was the circles, right? Because it feels like, as I love that analogy of the golden treadmill, right? Because you see it, I've seen it, I've got it near me, just for reasons of my journey. I've never felt congruent with it, right? I come from nothing, so like, but I feel like it seems like some folks are just in this imaginary race. That's bullshit. It's they're just in this race about the latest car, the house, the boat, the just. But I've been told this by people like that don't have money or just work middle class jobs or whatever. It goes, oh, it's easy to say something like that when you've got money. And I go, maybe, but maybe you should listen too when you're trying to say, hey, it's not all about the money. Exactly what you're trying to say, right? It's not all about the money. But back to the question, like, is it because of that influence circle that is all about the big $1,000 dinner, where'd you eat at this weekend? Where are you going now? Like, is a part of that treadmill just the influence that's around you, like what you're seeing and trying to keep up?
Absolutely. Well, I'll speak for me, and I can speak for my clients as well. But it's definitely it is the circle that we're around. It could be the environment that we're in. I lived next door to literally one of the wealthiest towns in the world, Greenwich, Connecticut, and that's where I spent the majority of my time. And I was competing with. I did very well, but I was competing with billionaires. You drive down Greenwich Avenue, and Aston Martins are like Hondas. The $3 million Ferrari Enzos parked on the street. It's, ridiculous. And that's what I was trying to keep up with. And I also think that a huge part of that golden treadmill is the shoulds and expectations of society, family, and friends. You should get a corporate job. You should climb the corporate ladder. You should do this. You should send your kids to this school. You should live in this neighborhood. All of these things, really following somebody else's blueprint. And that's why you're not, that's why you're not living in that congruency. And that's why a lot of times when we get to that middle point of our life, that midlife crisis starts kicking in, because we've followed somebody else's blueprint and we're like, what the hell? Where's all the joy and the fulfillment? It's
and
not
your
here.
Your why was all jacked up, right? Like your why, like, around here, it's a big thing, like house on the water. And people ask, and like, I still live in the house I built when I got out of the Marine Corps. People are like, why don't you have the house on the water? Like, why is a good reason. Like, why would I, why do I want to pay, in tax what I pay on my mortgage right now? Right. Like, and property. And, like, so it feels like, but the question's being asked, like, to show what you've got. And I don't know. I think I've been fortunate, right? Because I could have fallen in some of those traps of going and buying $1 million property to say I have it. You know what I mean? Like, it's that stuff that I think some people and again, the golden treadmill thing, they're just there and they're chasing the wrong things and don't even have a good reason for it other than their surroundings.
I think it's really, really important to not fall into the luxury trap and to maintain a Spartan-like mindset, right? Like, because simplicity in the face of the fact that you could be extravagant is a form of discipline. Yeah. It's a form of tempering yourself. And I think, like, I've got old ass cars, right? Like, I will not buy a new car until that shit dies. Like, one of the electrics aren't working. The other day, my wife was like looking at me like with that look, because it's like the back door, you got to go through the front. Like, we got babies, you got to pull out from the front. It's just messy, right? Like, you don't know when it's going to happen either, right? And so, but it's just, to me, it's like, in AA, in Alcoholics Anonymous, we talk about ego deflation, intentional ego deflation. You use opportunities to deflate your ego, and it keeps you stronger. It keeps you stronger when you can test yourself and challenge yourself and ensure that the noise of the world does not pull you towards it, and you are able to stay on your own mat. But that takes a real deep sense of self-knowledge. We don't all just get there from day one. I mean, we've all paid the price of trying to keep up with the Joneses in some way, but it takes real maturity and confidence. Like I see it with my 4.5-year-old, right? Like he goes to school. I can see the powers of influence already pulling him. Part of me wants to tell him, make your own path. Like I want to instill my level of confidence. Like you play the way you want to play and let others come to you, right? Like, but he's a child, right? Like he's going to go through that experience of needing to be part of, and that's the human journey, right? That's the human experience. Something I want to talk about that you guys touched on. Like personally, I'm going through that, and there's more happening in this space. I was in a board meeting the other day with my team, and we're looking at another 5-year journey, and I was kind of like, oh, and I'm sitting there, and we're talking about what seems to be exciting everyone, corporate structures and functional departments, and I'm like, I just had this real. It's been coming, but I just had this real moment of clarity sitting in this meeting. Like, wow. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just not me anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm at, maybe it's because I've hit 40 too, right? Like I'm at this stage of like autonomy, wearing a dress and running down the street if I want to with a fucking tutu is what's more important to me than anything. Time is my most important resource right now. And it's becoming increasingly clear. I just felt like I wanted to throw that out there because for me, what you guys are talking about is actually quite relevant right now.
And I'm glad we're talking about it because it's that realization, and Craig was talking about, there's a distinct difference between being wealthy and having personal freedom, right? Now, one can lead to the other, but what we're saying is seek personal freedom. And personal freedom doesn't mean you got $3 million in the bank and the big house and the nice cars and the garage full of other ones that you never drive, because there's truth to the mo money, mo problem. Like the more, like again, back to it. I know having all that crap just means I got more crap to worry about, and I want less crap to worry about. I'm getting rid of stuff right now because I want, like, I'm sure you guys watch like The Minimalist or whatever. Like, I in part envy those guys. Now, obviously, they don't have a wife and kids like I do, because I'm not winning the battle at home. Like, hey, let's buy the RV, throw the kids in it, and homeschool. I'm not winning that battle right now. But damn, if I wouldn't do it, if Jody said sounds great, we'd be gone in a week. I'd be like, yeah, see you, bye. List this place and let's roll. Because, but it's to that, right? I would rather just go live free. Like, so even now, like trying to detach from some of like, I'll say the work of having a lot of material possessions. There's like a lot of extra work to maintain this stuff, and maybe you've got to watch The Minimalist to kind of get this perspective that I'm trying to throw down. But I just know the less I have, the happier I am. Like it's the less I have to worry about, the less clutter I have in my head, which back to high performance, like gives me more energy. Like I've got more energy to put into things that I know I care about, that I want to be doing. And that excites me, just that personal freedom element, getting that.
What I hear from that, Dale, and correct me if I'm wrong, is just, you're very clear on what you want. And it could be that peace, it could be that freedom. And you understand that all of those additional things are going to chip away and erode at that. And you value your peace and your freedom much higher than that. And I have to say, for me, prison taught me how little I need to live.
Yeah.
You're in a tiny little cube, and you've got just a storage locker and 5 hooks on the wall, and you don't have a lot of stuff. And it was funny to watch other people who were still in acquisition mode inside prison, still acquiring, like, hey, I got a bottle of stamps. I got a bottle of olive oil, a little bit of contraband, that they were so, but like I'm just gathering all these things. And I said, wow, I don't want that. I want as little as possible, because prior to the arrest, managing a 5-figure Amex bill every month. And, I had all these fancy watches that I love them. I do have a passion for them, but they're automatic and they need to be worn so that they tell the correct time. I can't wear 8 watches at the same time. So I've got all these, it's a very small example, but they need to be maintained so that they're telling the right time. So they do what they're meant to actually do. That's just another cog that I have to keep track of. And that's having all those things, having multiple cars. It's just, it took away from the peace and the freedom that I said I wanted.
It creates mental fatigue.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
It creates mental fatigue. I mean, it really does. Like and it's funny. I think you just have to go through that journey. I think maybe it's an age thing.
Mm.
Like maybe how you grow up as well can influence and help and shape that, right? But like if you grew up with parents that were really like in tune with minimalization and whatever, but yeah, you're right. It just creates mental fatigue for sure.
Well, and I came up small and I was aspiring for it until I had it, right? Like when I was coming up, like, man, I want that. Like I wasn't that kid with the nice shoes. I saw all the other damn kids had the Jordans and all that stuff. And I'm kind of like hiding my shit so they don't see what I'm wearing. But in my head going, I'm going to have them. You watch. And I went and got it. And then when I got to that point though, this is what came about. It was Craig hit it. It was the congruency. Like I wasn't congruent with all of that and recognize like, hey man, I like simple. I'm a keep it simple, stupid guy. And look, people with the ego, they love to take advantage of that, right? Because they want to flare, they want to like keep score and all that. But to RJ's point earlier, like that's just a mental discipline thing to say, hey man, that's a game I'm not playing. And I've said this to people, hey, you're keeping score in a game that I'm not playing. Like, like you're keeping tabs on my score in a game that I'm not playing. And that's the truth. But I had to learn that because a decade I spent, what can I get? How can I get it? And but the mental fatigue is true. Yep.
Do you think people have to come at that? Like everyone has to come at that through their own process. Like, do you think like it's all well and good for us because we've gone through what we needed to go through? But do you think that if someone doesn't go through it themselves, they would be looked at as like, let's say, lazy? For instance, us three, we can have this conversation and people watching this would be like, oh, well, that makes sense because these guys had it and they have it. And now they've, through their own wisdom and journey. But if we had like, 3 20-year-olds on this call talking about like, man, stuff isn't cool. Like, do you get what I'm saying? Like, because society would be like, well, you know what I mean? Like, what's your view on that?
And that's why I brought up the part that I was chasing it because I saw it, right? I saw people around me like that had money, had these things, and I'm going to get there, right? I'm going to go get that. And that maybe directionally set me on a focus driven path to go have success. What was shown to me as success, right? Like, and Craig said this, right? I was chasing someone else's blueprint. So I'll credit his point, right? I chased someone else's blueprint with regard to like, material success, until I realized that just there was no intentionality there, right? That I had these things for why, like, and just having them and just wasn't congruent with me. And I think people should have those things that are important to them. Like if you're into cars and it's a passion of yours and you want to buy that, do it, because what are we talking about? At the end of the day, it's joy. But if you have 16 cars just to tell people you have them, but you never drive them and you don't know crap about them, you're just, again, it's that, you're putting up that highlight reel type of stuff. But as opposed to the passion thing, that's where the joy element comes in. So I don't know. I mean, and I think like it's to the people that are there playing that game. What I've noticed is when I speak up and go, hey, no, I don't really drink, man, or no, I don't go out. I get up at 4. In those circles, like there's sidebar conversations that come up. Like, yeah, man,
Always,
man,
yeah.
How long you been running? What do you do? And they, these little side, because they're not used to having those conversations sometimes, right? They're not used to someone saying, nah, I'm not going to a club, after the conference, I'm going to go dial in, I want to get up and run in the morning, or I want to get up and go check out this, whatever in the city or whatever. They go, huh? I was at a conference, maybe it was last year, and I wasn't drinking. And that was the thing. Like someone was like, what do you mean? Like, yeah, I don't drink, man. And I had like a Heineken Zero or whatever. And then it turned, you're drinking a what? Why do you drink that? And that person had never heard it. Like the expectation was you're at these conferences. It's a happy hour. You're supposed to be drinking. We're supposed to be getting drunk. Where's everybody going at? Like, I was like, nah, I'm good. And it was, so there's that element that we have the opportunity to provide some influence, like a counterpoint to this, a different shine a light on this, because we're outnumbered in regard, right? Like there's everyone playing that game, trying to keep up with the highlight reel on the socials. And there's an opportunity to tell a different story that some people probably, I mean, RJ, I'm sure you get it from the podcast. Like I get people going, yeah, man, I'm glad you said something about you don't drink. That's cool. I don't, whatever. And I would get that type of feedback because it makes them think that, yeah, there is an opportunity to maybe be different. I don't know. That's just me.
What comes up for me when you say that is that the people, those sidebar conversations are the people who are starting to realize that they're living somebody else's blueprint, that they're stuck maybe on that golden treadmill. And then they see a different opportunity and they want to inquire about it. And even the fact that they're inquiring like, hey, you don't drink, that is an anomaly. And the funny thing is I haven't actually had a drink since the first week of June last year. And, I would say that I definitely had an alcohol problem before being arrested by the FBI. Afterwards, I feel like I was managed it really well. I don't do it because I can't write the next day. That's the only, I was like, no, it screws up my writing. So I'm not going to do that. And it opens up such a different level of conversation where that person will be more open to not letting the ego drive the bus.
Yeah.
Saying, wow, there's a different way than what I think. And I think it takes a lot of courage actually for that person to have that sidebar conversation. And because it's so easy to follow the crowd, to follow all the other lemmings and, to break off and, inquire. What they do with that information is a different story. But I think even starting that conversation it's got to start with some level of awareness, and we can open up that door by just showing a different option.
I find myself trying to curate, particularly with my son. We spend a lot of time, and I know Dale, you do this with your son as well. You guys go hunting and stuff, and like I get on the trail with my son, and I'm slowly trying to curate a part of him that realizes that the world does give you real accolades for being independent and running your own race. Because what I'm trying to do, and I think we're all at a stage where our environment has given us positive reinforcement for running our own race. We have built that sense now into our identity that we are people that run our own race. We're not pulled by our environment. And somewhere in our journey, we've gotten positive feedback, these little conversations, these sidebar conversations, the stuff that you guys know what I'm talking about. It gives us a real sense of confidence, not that fake bullshit, that ego inflation. I'm talking about when you stand firm in what you believe in when 80 other people are doing the same shit with all the other sheep, and you're standing firm in your belief system, and then people are coming to you and saying, well, how do you do that? That kind of fuels the fire. And I know what I'm trying to do with my kids, and because the peer influence is going to be pulling at and telling them, hey, come here, be a sheep with us. This is where coolness is, right? This is where, if you do what we do and you look like us and you act like us and you have the same shoes, and they're going to fight that battle. And what I'm trying to do one-on-one, particularly with my son right now, because he's conscious, is fuel that fire of independence and really start to build that sense of confidence in where it's at, son, is when you're able to stand in your own shoes, march to your own drum. Sure, be involved, help, add value. You can be and you can support the crowd whilst not having to be in the crowd. And I think it's important that individuals that are on a path start to get a sense of to get to this place that we're talking about isn't an overnight process. People need to see value in being independent and being not part of the crowd. A lot of people that try to get off the alcohol, one of their biggest concerns is, how am I going to socialize? how am I going to socialize? How am I going to go to my daughter's wedding, which is going to happen in 30 years, right? Because she's like 2, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, but you guys get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think what's so interesting about that is that society definitely celebrates the independence, but we celebrate the final product. I don't
Yeah.
think
The process. Yes.
we don't focus on the process of it.
Yes.
And that process means that we're kind of leaving the tribe, if
Yes.
you will. And we're so damn concerned about what the tribe is going to do. It's only when we hit that certain level, then all of a sudden we are awarded. But to decide to do that is one of the most frightening things that we have to do, because we're no longer in the tribe. And Stephen Pressfield, author, amazing author, he talks about this, and he says, we're so concerned about what the tribe thinks. Here's a little story for you. The tribe doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
They're all concerned about themselves.
Yeah.
They're all concerned about themselves. They don't really care what you're going to go off and do. But it's so hard to take that leap, to take that different path, because it's so uncommon. But it's weird. It's such a paradox that we celebrate the final product, but not that initial decision to seek that. That's kind of what I think. And I think that's such a challenge, and why it's so easy to fall into the sheep.
The tall poppy, I think, plays a part in that too, right? Like, like when people that we know, or people start to walk, when you start to walk your own path, those in our inner circle, in terms of, let's just say family, for instance, that don't have the same values as us, will start to look at us weird. What are you doing, right? Why are you doing that? Blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
But then once you get there, you see, because that's the thing. Like, people, their own insecurities, and the mirror gets held up once you start to embark on that journey.
Yeah.
And then people see the end result, and they're just like, oh, that fucker was lucky, or, or whatever, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? That is kind of how it is, man.
Yeah. No, and it's right. It's I tell people today, like, hey, you're going to make changes for the better, and the crabs in a bucket are going to try to pull you in. They're going to say things to you and make you feel bad about it. And then a year from now, when you're firing on all cylinders and you got all this good stuff going for you, those same people are going, hey man, how'd you do that? What did, those same people, they come back, not all of them, but it happens. Sometimes they come back around going, hey man, I saw what, and it was the same dude that was hating on you 6 months ago. Now he's seeing what's going on. He's seeing some success or your happiness or whatever. And maybe they too will kind of break out. But yeah, you're right, RJ. It comes back to the discipline. But what we're talking about, the courage to be different, because it is so easy to be comfortable today. It's so easy to be mediocre and still survive and get your means met and all that stuff. And it takes a ton of courage to kind of step out of that herd, so to speak, and try. And again, I'm going to say this: be different for you, like for the right reason, not be different for the sake of be different and stand out and all that, because that's a whole other side. That's a whole other incongruence that you find yourself. You're like, you did something to get attention, you got the attention, and now you keep running down that path, and that wasn't you either. You know what I mean? So there's that. I have a lot of suspicions about a lot of people online with that today, but a lot of people in general, frankly. But the courage to be congruent with your own passions, your own desires, right? Not sacrificing, your own passions and desires out of fear of what people are going to think about you or say about it, or look, and root for your failure, right? I've been around the people that the crabs in the bucket that are rooting for you to fail so you can get back in the bucket with them. I've been around the people that they want to see you be successful, so long as you're not more successful than they are. It's they're there. They're all around you, and you know what? And that's why some of my stuff today, like the whole let your courage reign, sharpen your sword, and all that. Like, that's where that comes from, man. Like, fuck them. Sharpen your sword, know what you want, and go get it. Like, they're not going to give it to you, and you're going to know who's going to help you, who's going to contribute to it. So go get it. Like, go get it, man. You're going to hate yourself if you don't.
What I think people don't realize is that a rising tide lifts all boats.
It does. Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah. We'll stick with the cliches all day, because they're right. It's true. Those people start to come up, when you start being the good change in your circle, like the drinking circle, like, and you're the one going, hey guys, I'm working on this, and you're welcome to join me if you want. I'm not going out tonight. I'm gonna get up and go run tomorrow morning. I want to do something about this. You're welcome to join me. Otherwise you guys have fun, right? And don't make it, don't play RJ knows this. You both know this, right? Like the drinking thing, once you stop drinking, they make it about them, right? Oh man, you don't want to hang on me? No, I don't want to drink. Like, you can come with me, but they make it about them. Like you, when you start doing these things, you throw up a mirror, that RJ actually said this, right? You throw up that mirror where they start your positive actions, they take offense to it, like it's some sort of reflection on them, or by you trying to do better for yourself is some sort of judgment on them. Right. And, you got to have that habit. Say, hey man, no, I'm sorry you feel that way. Just know it's not about you. It's about me. I'm doing this for me, and just own it. You can keep that independence piece.
People, yeah, over the years, and, I've been and had and been done to so many events, right? Like we had even with clients, we were on a boat, on a yacht, and, in Christmas, and I probably was the loudest one singing and acting the fool, didn't need alcohol, lost my voice. But you're right. Like the next morning, 6 a.m., I'm running around the Sydney Harbor and everyone's dusty, right? And that day I fly in home, I'm straight into the family. And for me, and I think for those, particularly if you want to talk about alcohol, what you start to realize is that those next days, when you can wake up from, doing an event, you added value in that event, you knew what you said, you knew how you conducted yourself. For me, I get messy. I don't know what I say, who I offend, like I do all kinds of crazy shit. When I know I didn't do that, and I'm able the next day to get up and still conduct myself, like for me, that value, nothing, no wonderful magical night, full of alcohol could derive that level of value and just utility of when you have a family as well, right? Like you get older, right? Like what with the hangover, resenting that hangover. I got a good friend. He said successful drinking is in not resenting the hangover. That's some wisdom there. But like, like I couldn't do that. Like I would resent the hangover, right? Like, and I would, and I just think, it's a thing. So I'm with you guys. And that rising tide brings up all boats. Like, the biggest one there is like your family.
Mm-hmm.
Like, like for us, it's so important to be the behavior we want to see.
Yeah.
Something that when I notice from family or friends saying, in a sense, you can't do that. You start saying that I'm going to write a book or I'm going to be a speaker. It's like, you have a criminal record. Have you ever written a book? You don't know what to do. They'll say it sometimes very directly. Sometimes it's a little bit passive aggressive. How are you going to begin? And it's not, it's not meant in real inquiry, but it's meant as, well, how are you going to start this? And what I've come to realize is there's a litany of things that people are actually saying when they say that you can't do this. And it really is, I don't know how. I wish I had the courage to do what you're doing. Your success is a mirror of my failures. We keep going back to that mirror because I think it really is. You're showing me where I'm falling short in my own life. They could be even saying, take me with you. There are just a laundry list of things. And now when I see people, doing less and less people are doing that in my life. But if anybody ever does, I actually realize that it's coming from a place of fear, and I can feel empathy for them because they're operating from somebody else's blueprint with a desire to do more, and they just don't know how. And I can actually have that empathy and compassion for them and try to bring them along, but you can't force it if they're not willing.
And look, man, you also don't need to justify yourself, right? Like there's that too. Like, and I just say that generally for the folks that might run into this adversity, like you don't need to explain yourself to anyone, as far, if you're doing the right things for yourself, you've got the courage to jump on that path towards the proper goals, desires, and passions that you have for yourself. And you're on that path and people are challenging you, like you owe them some sort of explanation for the sake of debating the choices that you're making. Just know you don't, I'm not saying you have to be an asshole, but sometimes you got to go, hey man, I appreciate your feedback, good. Roger that. You just keep going. You don't need to, right? It's the equivalent of like a political debate on Facebook, right? You don't need to have that conversation. You can just keep your eye on the prize, trying to prove yourself to them. Where does that fit in the contribution to your end game? It doesn't. It right? It doesn't fit in the, just watch and see what happens. RJ, I know you got short time.
Yeah.
Any saving parts you want to?
No, boys, I want to do this again. Sorry for leaving early. As I said earlier, we do a boot camp for the staff on Tuesdays and Fridays, and I'm out there running it. So I don't want to leave the ladies high and dry. They got their yoga mats and their bands, and we're ready to go. I'm going to go kick their ass out there.
Ready to
for a
get some
little bit.
burpees in?
Yeah, make them do burpees. Some of them got bad knees and shit, so they do jumping jacks or whatever. But really appreciate you guys. I love this. Let's do it again. This is great. I really,
We
really
had to
enjoyed
part
the
two. We didn't even
conversation.
get into what Craig wanted to talk about, which is like the tactical habits that we're doing. But look, I think this is the foundation, right? Like it starts with
Yeah.
the high performer mindset and the challenges that you're going to face in the transition. So I thought it's been great. So
Well, let's do this again, boys. Let's collaborate and get on this. Yeah.
I would love
All right.
that.
Definitely.
I'll leave you guys.
All right. Thanks, RJ. Good seeing you.
RJ, have a great day.
So
I think,
there was two.
I think that we, the three of us have a depth of knowledge. We could just, we could talk about a lot of different things and go really deep on it. And it's funny that you're right. I think we had to establish a little bit of that mindset before we even talked about the very granular pieces of those habits.
Well, I think we know, right? We can jump straight into get up at 4 a.m. and have your 45-minute or hour and a half workout and read every day and write every day. Like we could have jumped straight there, but I think all of us know better, right? It's just not flipping a switch. You got to have your head right first, and you got to know, one, we've talked about the intentionality and the why and all that stuff, but it is a transition, right? You've got to kind of get some roots in and kind of have a game plan. And some of that game plan includes like how to deal with some of the adversity that you face in this, personally and, socially or whatever.
It is. It's a challenge. If all of a sudden you decide that you want to start getting up at 5 a.m. to go working out, and that's going to impact going out with friends, a lot of stuff's going to, like we talked about, a lot of stuff is going to come up. And how do you do that? And how do you navigate that so you can actually connect with what you want to do?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's important, I would say, one of the things that I'm fortunate of, just kind of bouncing around this a little bit, is that my wife will jump on board with me, and she'll be like, "You're doing what?" Like it started with 75 hard. I ended up doing that. I was just kind of hearing a lot about it. I just want to challenge myself, and you got to have that conversation. Like, and one of the things, like jumping in relationships, you got to have good communication. You got to fill in your significant other on what your goals and things are that you're doing, right? And you won't get into high performance relationships today, but I had that conversation. Hey, this thing's been rolling around, and I think I'm going to start this 75 hard. So for the next 75 days, here's the things that I'm going to have to do, and just want to kind of give you a heads up, and kind of told her my game plan. Like, hey, I thought this out. I see these next 75 days. It looks like I can get it done. Here's how it would impact me and us or whatever. And like her response is like, cool, I'll do it too. And then it was like, okay, now it's on. Now it's not, as opposed to, right. And what I'm talking about is getting your circle up, right? Like and as opposed to that circle going, you're doing what? What do you mean? You're not going to drink. You're going to be getting up early. Like, what do I got to, you're going to be waking me up. I'm not going to see you. You're not going to be fun to hang with. Right. Like, oh, that's a part of it, so.
Yeah. And I think that's so important. It's not necessarily that we want somebody to jump on board with us, which is amazing. I think it's incredible that your wife jumped right on that. I think that's awesome. But to just be, how can I support you? Or,
right.
At a bare minimum, that sounds incredible. It's not for me, but I love that you're doing it.
Right.
It's kind of that honest feedback and communication, and like lifting up that circle and really culling out the people that are going to go, oh, that make it, like you said, about them.
Yeah,
Oh, you
because
can't hang out
it's a
anymore.
source of it's a source of friction, right? It's already like the transition's already hard enough, and now right out of the gate you're running into this friction, this pushback, this headwind that doesn't necessarily need to be there. So it's good to like make sure you know who the right circle is, right, those supporters that you need and the supporters that you don't need. Those are the nice to have. So it would be nice that my drinking buddy would support me not drinking, but odds are that's not going to happen. So, but that's okay because he's not a contributor to this mission in a way, right? So
Right. Yeah, yeah, it's so important. I'm just thinking it's funny as we're talking, my girlfriend's going for a swim. That's her physical activity. That yoga, Pilates, but she's a huge swimmer, not my cup of tea. But it's like, how can I help you? Can I take you to the pool? Whatever it may be. It's just like, you do you. She doesn't go to the gym. That's not her thing. She supports me in that. It's just having that, like we keep saying, just that support. It just makes it easier. It just makes it easier. And having that mindset for when you don't have the support, how you work through that. And you nailed it when you said we don't have to justify ourselves to anybody. I had a coach that I worked with for a while who used to say, you don't know anybody's shit.
mm-hmm.
That was just, when I was talking about explanations, she's like, you don't know anybody's shit.
Yeah.
Tiny little woman just would slam down that hammer of you don't. And it was just so liberating and freeing that we don't have to justify ourselves. We're on the path that we want to be, and we're adding joy to our own life. And I think if we're being of service to the world, it's very hard to question that, and we don't have to justify that to other people.
Yeah, and it comes down to that, integrity and courage. Integrity to live congruently with the things that you want from yourself, or those personal freedoms or those passions. That's the integrity piece, because people don't need to know, right, that you're not living congruently with your desires, right? Like you can hide that all day, and so that's an integrity thing, right? Like doing what's right even when no one's looking. Like integrity is the part, like the things you're doing that other people don't know about or couldn't know about, right? So and then there's the courage piece to do it when people are watching, when they're going to see you, and they're going to see you, win, lose, or draw, so to speak. And so I think both those things are really, really vital to a transformation like this, and to get into, a high performer, lifestyle.
And I think I'd love to know your thoughts. I think you'll tend to agree, but it's the clarity. It really starts with the awareness and the clarity of what it is that you want to build, how you want to feel, and then building the structures and the habits around that. What is going to support that? Using the cars that you mentioned before, you have a passion for cars. I want to restore a car. Okay, what are the structures I can put around that? Why do I want to do that? What can I do? I need to save money. I need a garage. I need these tools. And I could do it from 2 to 4 on Sundays, whatever it may be. But, getting that crystal clear clarity and a why, and building the infrastructure to support it.
Yeah, 100%. Right. That's the courage, clarity, leadership stuff in my brand is not by accident. I feel like, you've got to establish that clarity. You've got to know what your vision is. You've got to know what skills do you need to enact that vision? What's the truth of the matter, right? Where do you stand in relation to this goal, right? And being honest with yourself and others about it. And then the more clarity you get, that's where your confidence comes from, right? Like, to your point about writing a book, right? Before you knew what the process was, it's probably a scary thought, right? Like having to go write a book, but I have no idea how that's, and there's a lack of confidence because you don't have clarity on the process. However, probably the first conversation you had with someone who said, this is how you do it, this is what the process looks like, you go, oh, I can do this, right? Like almost probably right away, you get that clarity, and boom, here comes the confidence. Now, with the confidence starts to come the courage, and they're two different things, because the confidence, you can have confidence and not act, right? And the the courage gives you the strength to act on it, right? So you knew what you wanted, you got the clarity on how it happens. Now you got the confidence that you can do it, and now you have the courage to start marching down that path to get it done.
Can I I'm going to interject something into that formula. I
Yeah.
think self-trust.
Yeah.
Self-trust to me is absolutely imperative. I would almost put that in between confidence and courage, because you really, the courage is taking that leap into the
Hmm.
unknown. And I believe my definition of self-trust is not that things are going to work out okay. It is if no matter what happens, you know that you'll be okay.
Yeah.
Even if things go sideways, you know you'll be okay. And that to me is self-trust. And that's what really enables that courage to happen. Because even if things go absolutely sideways, it's going to suck for a little bit. It's going to be a little painful, but you know you'll be okay. You know that you can pick yourself up off the ground. And when you know you'll be okay, then you can take that leap.
Yeah, and that goes a little bit back to the minimalist stuff. Like the more crap you have to spin plates for, the more risk you have of loss, even in your head, whether sometimes it is real financial loss or whatever. But the more complicated you have things, all these houses that you have mortgaged and the car loans and the credit cards and all that stuff, the more things you have to be accountable to, let's say, the harder it is to take those risks, because to your point, like that feeling of, oh, it'll be okay, you've got a whole lot more to account for, in that regard. And I think that's another thing to affirm your statement there, is that, having that personal freedom that, yeah, I could take this risk and fail on my face and I'm gonna be all right, but as opposed to like, man, I don't know, I got all these bills, and if I go chase my dream or go to school and learn this new trade because I want to, but I know the pay will be less on the other side, and I got this house, and you know what I mean? And boom, 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 here comes the stack, card stacked against you.
Yep. Yeah, it becomes very hard to take that first step.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
next to impossible.
I like that. Absolutely. So, well, I think we probably should wrap it up on this one and agree to hunt RJ down and follow back up and do a part 2 to this, because we can get into like the tactics, but I think like let's save round 2 and jump into some tactical stuff, around routines and all that.
I would love that, because honestly, I have a personal curiosity, like what your day looks like. I have an idea because you and I have spoken several times, but I would love to get a little granular on your day and RJ's day.
Yeah.
Honestly, just to almost selfishly, just for my own curiosity, and how can I improve my day? Maybe what am I missing? What can I? Honestly, I want to learn from you guys. Yeah, I mean that's
Good.
as simple as that. So I think that would be. I would love to have a part 2 on this, getting a little bit granular.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's great. But I love how we kind of set the foundation though. So we can start building, right? We know all the
Yep.
things we got to be thinking about, and the okays, right? It's okay, man. It's okay to, I was talking on a workshop the other day as an example. One of my high performance leaders, really just in stride with growth, and they're making this, and if I've heard it so many times, but I don't know. The people I was hanging out with before, don't want to hang out with me now because we're not about the same things anymore, right? They've chosen, like we've talked about the whole saying, and I said, man, here's the thing, dude. And I'm not saying this judgy or any other way, but like your circle may get smaller, but the quality will go up, right? Like, and that is okay, right? You can have a big crappy circle or you might have a smaller quality circle. But that's just because the masses are kind of against it's that whole mediocrity mindset. Like we're so comfortable these days. It's so easy to just be that bobber in the ocean and bob around, and what you're looking forward to on Fridays, where you're going to be, and who you're trying to pick up and all that crap. It's easy to live that life, man. So yeah, your circle will get smaller. It'll just get better.
We settle for breadcrumbs when the entire loaf is literally right there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's within reach, and we settle for breadcrumbs.
Yeah. 100%.
It's teach their own.
Yeah. And look, but at the same time, you'll like, we've mentioned this too, like, but you will influence them, right? For the better that you're,
Yeah.
and that's where the leadership fact comes in. Like leadership, you don't have to be in charge of someone to lead them, by way of your influence and your example and your result in joy and health and the things that, and happiness and all that, like that influences people. And that's like we talked about earlier, that's when those people who are, holding out on you or pulling on you now will come back around and start asking you some questions. And now that circle kind of comes back again a little bit. So.
Because I think that freedom and peace that you get when you're really connected with that just it creates an energy and a light,
Yeah.
that just radiates to people that people are drawn to and they just can't help but see. And
Yeah.
it's just like, it's like, how did you do that? How
Right.
did you do that? I have to know. And
Yeah.
it's just that ripple effect, but it takes some time sometimes for them to come back around.
It does. And that's okay. But again, you gotta keep your eye on your prize, man. And make those changes and have the courage to do it. And yeah, so I think it's been an awesome chat, man. So good. So we'll hop off for now and hang out. I'm just going to stop the recording, so don't run off. But yeah, we'll hang up for now and we'll round up RJ and we'll get another round two in.
Oh, I love it.
All right. Thanks, man. Good talking to you.
Thank you, Joe.